Call to order the regular meeting of the Dickinson City Commission for Tuesday, February 4th. Let the record show we're missing one commissioner, Commissioner Riddle. First item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move into the order of business. Mr. Dossinger, are there any changes to the order of business?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Commission. There is a change to the order of business this evening underneath number 7, Community Development. Letter C, Department of Water Resources cost share request for approval letter for Mans Dam will be removed from the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dossinger. Are there any questions on the amended order of business? If not, I'd look for a motion on the order of business.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve
Second.
with a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the order of business as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll move into consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that commissioners wish to discuss? If there is no discussion on consent agenda, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Bear,
Second.
second by Commissioner Oderman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We'll move into administration and finance. Our city boards committee appointments. This will be handled by City Administrator Dossinger.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Commission. We have 5 members on the Planning and Zoning Commission whose terms expired at the end of 2024 and desire reappointment. Those members are Aaron Johansson, Mike Schwab, Richard Haugen, Valerie Decker, and Zach Keller. City staff recommends reappointment of those members to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Dossinger. Are there any questions on the reappointment of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners that wish to be reappointed? If there are no questions, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Frederick,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bear. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next one up, Deputy City Administrator Carlson will be giving us a recall election update.
Thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. This is a recall election update and change of officers, just to make awareness of it. There we go. Okay, on January 21st Commission meeting, the positions of the Inspector in Charge officer and the absentee officer were approved by the Commission. Peggy Meduna had accepted this position but informed me that she needs to step down from this position due to a family matter. But Joanne Heiser has accepted the position for the recall election as the absentee officer. She is a city resident who has many years of being an election worker. She will be paid the $21 an hour for the time she will be putting in from January 30th through March 11th. So that was just an update for you on that. And then for the public and everyone, I wanted to go through that just where you can get an application for the absentee ballot. So on our city website, which is dickinsongov.com, you can use the search bar, you can type the word in ballot, and it will take you to the absentee application page. Or you can click on, if you roll the front page down, there is a blue icon in the middle there that says vote special election icon. You can also click on that. And that'll bring you to this page, and right at the bottom of this screen there, you'll see a brown banner and it says absentee election application. You can click on that. That will take you to the application form also. There is also the recall election update homepage here, the absentee election application. And on here, you've got 3 different ways you can get an application. You can download it and print it out for yourself. You can use the Secretary of State online. You can use the Stark County website. You can also get an application there. And then just to go through the information on the absentee, how do I vote, the absentee, all of this information is on there, how to fill it out, what you need to do. And you can either pick up a form here at City Hall, you can email your application form into the absentee.ballot@dickinsongov.com, and you can also just drop it off if you need to. We do have, right inside our lobby, we do have a drop-off box for the election ballots or the application forms, and then they will be processed through the application officer. And then right at the very bottom of that page, there is a PDF that you can also download too on that. So that's my report. Any questions on that?
Thank you, Mrs. Carlson. Any questions on Mrs. Carlson's report? Thank you again. We'll move into public safety. The first thing up this evening, we have a MOU between DSU and the Dickinson Fire Department, to be presented by Fire Chief Presnell. Welcome.
Thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. Before you tonight is a MOU between the Fire Department and Dickinson State University for the use of their high-fidelity simulation lab. They have a very extensive lab that would allow us to do all of our EMS skills, including up to labor and delivery. The agreement does not charge for the use of their facility. We do have to pay $50 an hour for their technician to operate because it takes specialized training, and then a $50 an hour maintenance fee. The term of the agreement will go until May of 2027. It has been approved by legal, and the fire department staff does recommend approval.
Thank you, Chief Presnell. Any questions on this MOU with Dickinson State University? There are no questions. I'd look for a motion. Motion to approve by Commissioner Frederick.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Oderman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the annual fire report. Chief Presnell gets to stay there and break it down for us, I guess.
Thanks again, President Decker and Commissioners. Before you tonight, I do have the annual report for the fire department for 2024. Just a reminder to everybody, the services we do provide, it goes above just response to fire. We do some EMS response right now, a lot of fire prevention activities, inspections, code enforcement, and public education. And then we are members of multiple regional response teams, including operations for hazmat, hazardous materials, low angle, confined space, and structural collapse for the southwest region of the state. Here's a breakdown of our incidents by month. You can see the big spike that happened in June of 2022. That's when we got a little more involved in EMS, and from there it just continues to increase. We did respond to 2,102 calls for the year of 2024. Here's incidents by type. We did respond to 69 fires in 2024. Fires do account for 3% of our overall call response, and as you can see, EMS and rescue take up the lion's share of our responses. Our fire loss versus saved, we had just over $18 million pre-incident value. We only saw just under $2 million in loss, so we did save about $16 million in property this last year, so that's a pretty good response. Here's a heat map of where a lot of our calls are happening this year. The red spots are apartment complexes or multi-family dwellings, so we do get a lot more responses there. But our calls kind of happen all over the place. And then a breakdown by station. Station 1 does respond to the majority of our calls, a little over 60%, and then Station 2. And that's divided by the interstate. We are working on doing a little better divide before we get into EMS on a more even split of the city between Station 1 and the Public Safety Center. Our response times, we're sitting pretty good. We did see an increased response time, and going back through the data, I did notice that our busiest times of the day were between like 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. So right when people were going to school, a lot of traffic kind of slowed us down. And then again, around lunchtime, we saw a little increase in calls. And then, of course, when school got out. So that did slow us down a little bit, but we're still pretty close to that 5-minute and 20-second at both stations. But we did see a slight slowdown to that based on traffic. Days of the week, oddly enough, Wednesday is our busiest day of the week, and it has consistently been our busiest day. Can't really find anything that explains why Wednesday is. It just happens that Wednesday is our busiest day of the week. But the rest of the days of the week are pretty even across the board. Training, we completed 9,525 hours of training for 2024. Overall, that put us at approximately 101% of training completed. I broke it down based on the categories for ISO, but in officer training, we were actually like 600% because we focus a lot on our officers, and any excess hours over that annual requirement will go into company training, but I broke it down by specific categories. And the same thing with our hazmat training. We sent a bunch of people, we got a grant for a hazmat technician course that we partnered with emergency management with. So we had a lot of hours there, and any excess hours kind of went in, but we ended up meeting our training hours by 101%. So overall, a pretty good year in training. Fire prevention, we completed 1,157 routine inspections. We had 891 other prevention activities, whether that's plan reviews, just phone calls to the station, informational stuff, and then we did issue 35 certificate of occupancies. In 2024, we participated in a lot of activities. These are just the few of the major activities. We do a ton of truck tours where people stop in at the station, or if we're out at events, they stop and want to check out the trucks. We did our stair climb, had good participation there. We saw about 600 to 700 people at the pancake breakfast this year. That increase every year gets a little bigger. Did a ton of classroom visits for Fire Prevention Week, and just throughout the year we get invited into the classroom. A lot of station tours. Fire Prevention Week, we were out in the schools, and then a lot of stuff with our DSU and CTE fire academies. We're in and out of the CTE building and the college, and then Giving Hearts Day we participated in, and we also participated in the National Night Out with the police department. And with that, I will gladly answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Chief Presnell. Any questions for Chief Presnell on the annual report?
Mr. President.
Commissioner Oderman?
Chief Presnell, thank you for the report. This is a question that I'm going to ask Chief Ciani too, so be ready back there, Chief. But how often when you guys are responding to a call, do you guys run into like a language barrier?
It's getting more and more common. I can think of just in the last month, probably like 7 or 8 different occasions where we've had language barrier issues. Just yesterday morning, a response for a grease fire. There was a language barrier between dispatch and the caller, and then when we got on scene, we're getting it all the time on medical calls, but we're seeing a significant increase in years past that we did not see.
Okay. Because the community health needs assessment, we just got the survey data this last week at the hospital, and that was something that came up both in Dickinson and in Williston, is just that language barrier is becoming an increasing issue. And what do we have to help us like kind of mitigate that? Like, do we have translation services that EMS is able to use, or like what do we utilize in that situation?
There are several existing. I think dispatch and PD and was using a service called Language Line, and I think Chief Ciani can probably get a little deeper into that, but that dispatch can kind of connect through that. And I know the PD right now is testing some devices that we can use for translation that we're looking at as well. We were going to kind of let them be the guinea pigs and see how well they work. So they were going to kind of give us some feedback, and I think Chief Ciani can give a little more insight on those devices. But it is something that we're exploring. We are looking at adding that into some of our job descriptions as a preferred skill, is by somebody being bilingual. Right now the fire department does have an open admin assistant position, and we did put that as a preferred skill just because of the increase we're seeing. We get a lot of people in the lobby of the Public Safety Center that come over to us that are looking for the fire department, and there is a language barrier. I have my mother that can translate, so sometimes I get her on the phone if in a pinch, but usually we just use the phones and Google Translate and kind of muddle through it to get somewhere with it.
Well, and I'm asking that question because in the situations that you guys are presented with that barrier, probably elevated level of stress in a lot of situations, especially EMS calls.
Yep.
Those translation services aren't always as successful over the phone or virtually because that individual is speaking so quickly that translation service is like basically next to useless because they can't actually translate. And so I wanted to ask that question just to demonstrate for the community, like this is a concern for our first responders, and it's a growing concern. So.
Yeah, it's a massive concern, and it's on all of our radar. We have had a lot of discussion about how we're going to move forward through this issue. We're exploring a bunch of different options. We just started kind of tracking these interactions in our reporting. And if I wish I would have known you were going to ask this question, because I would have pulled the numbers for January. Sure. But it is an increasing problem, and it used to be where when you would get on scene, you usually had a child that could kind of help you translate, and now it's parents, children that we're having the language barrier with, and it's just not an easy situation to get through sometimes.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Chief Presnell? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next up, we'll have Public Safety, Police, quarterly Police Department report, and this will be Chief Ciani.
Good evening, President Decker and Commissioners. I hope Chief Presnell is able to clarify your question there a little bit. We are, to expound on that a little bit for the language barrier, we are experimenting with some earbud system. That's a Time Kettle as a manufacturer. They're a little bit expensive, but we did get a grant to be able to equip most patrol staff with those. Also, Axon body camera system. It actually has a translation service that they're incorporating into body cameras. So we're hoping when we get our upgrades for our Axon body camera system, that's going to bridge that gap that we have right now. So we are struggling with a lot of telephone services in getting the translation services that we need, especially for criminal purposes. A lot of things are being discussed during those translation times that we're not privileged to, and we think there's more being discussed than should be discussed as far as what our parameters would have been. But yeah, it's a constant. I know the police department is dealing with that language barrier. I would imagine, without having the numbers in front of me, but I'm betting close to every other day we're dealing with something that has some form of language barrier that we're using the Google Translate, the Apple phones, and things like that to get by, and the translation services for now. But we are working on it actively. With that, I will be presenting the Police Department activities report for the fourth quarter of 2024. Dispatch activities for the past 3 months in 2024, dispatch received an average of 759 911 emergency phone calls, 3,970 non-emergency phone calls, and they initiated an average of 989 phone calls out of the dispatch center. Actual calls for service for the police department for this period, the department responded to an average of 2,168 calls for service for this quarter. Traffic stops were a little bit down per average of what we typically see in this. The proactive activities have suffered with the amount of training that staff has been doing with new recruits, and obviously weather is a factor in some of our traffic activities. With that, 325 traffic stops were conducted on average. Out of those traffic stops, 152 citations and 145 warnings were issued on average. Accidents averaged about 69 traffic accidents investigated each month, with just over 4 injury accidents coming through each month as well. Arrests, we're averaging 157 arrests average of the past 3 months in 2024 for the fourth quarter. And most of these arrests, they do involve some form of violence. Some of the arrest classifications, they're averaging just over 14 felony arrests a month, 82 misdemeanors, and 5 infractions, broken down on the graphs. Criminal investigations, they dealt with 42 call-outs for that 3-month period. That's an average of 10 call-outs a month, 10 plus. Guys are busy on call. They can pretty much be guaranteed to be called out a few times a week, each week. Some of the cases that they were called out upon and they were investigating, a couple of domestic violence related aggravated assaults involving a weapon, 2 burglaries, a suicide, a missing person, to name just a few of the more serious ones. Continuing on with criminal investigations, they averaged 67 new cases come in a month and closed out an average of 48 cases per month towards the fourth quarter. They're typically carrying about a 28 caseload right now.
Hey, Chief,
Yes.
real quick before you move from this slide here, when that 143 closed with no follow-up, can you just clarify what closed with no follow-up means?
It could be a variety of things. Could be a closed when they got the case. It was pretty much a buttoned-up case
Sure.
by patrol coming in, so all I do is put the finishing touches on it, move it on for charges. Or it could be a case that there was no criminal activity that was associated with that case, so we got as far as we could go and closed it out as a civil matter or something of that nature.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah. All right, of those cases, the top 3 number generators for investigations, they did run a number of sex offender checks in that period. They worked with 38 search warrants and conducted 21 agency assists. They got a number of notable incidents, tried to catch just the highlights of a number of pretty significant cases that we dealt with in the fourth quarter. Oscar Vasquez, 24, was arrested on an outstanding warrant out of Florida related to 6 counts of sexual battery and 2 counts of lewd or lascivious molestation. Zane Richards, 32, was arrested on multiple charges ranging from motor vehicle theft, unauthorized entry into a motor vehicle, fleeing, reckless driving, extreme indifference, reckless endangerment in relation to incidents spanning across Dickinson and Casper, Wyoming. He's actually in jail right now out in Fargo, so he's been hitting the whole state, stealing cars and doing whatever he can in the region. Jaleel Meadows, 23, was arrested on multiple felony warrants out of California in relation to charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, prohibited possession of a firearm by a felon. He was holding a $100,000 bond on him. He was taken into custody and later extradited back to California. Agency assist for Mesa, Arizona resulted in the arrest of Jose Vega, 51, for 12 counts of felony sexual assault. Vega was taken into custody and later extradited to Arizona. Felony charges are pending in relation to an internal theft embezzlement case of over $25,000 from a local bank here in Dickinson. Here's a couple of good ones for scamming and some other things that we were able to get in front of. Investigators intervened in a fraudulent wire scam related to transfer of $130,000 from Dickinson to a location in Florida. That was a life savings for an elderly person. A search warrant was obtained and resulted in recovery of over $110,000 of those transferred funds is what we were able to recover in just the amount of time before it got the final transfer, which would have been it would have been lost forever. Detectives investigated a scam which resulted in a Dickinson man losing over $300,000 through a lottery scam. The case was ultimately referred to the Homeland Security due to the amount of the loss and the actual national crossover. Jose Mauricio Mejes Pinto was arrested for C felony aggravated assault involving a weapon, C felony tampering with evidence, B misdemeanor resisting an officer. Pinto, along with 3 others, were arrested following a stabbing incident at a West Villard apartment complex. Shortly after being arrested and lodged at the Southwest Multi-County Correctional Center, a detainer for Pinto was filed by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Kyle Larson, 34, was arrested for burglary, resisting an officer, terrorizing, ingestion of a controlled substance, and alarming acts. After breaking into a neighbor's residence on the south side of town and briefly barricading himself in the residence with the victim still inside. Mario Ramez Vega, 41, was arrested for discharging a firearm within city limits and possession of a stolen firearm, said firearm he was discharging. Missing runaway 13-year-old juvenile female eluded officers for nearly 3 months in that time period until the investigator was finally able to track her back. She was floating around Bismarck, Glen Ullin area, and was finally tracked back to a residence in Hebron. After 3 months, she was returned safely. With that, we move into the behavioral health. Responded to an average of 98 behavioral health related calls for service during that time frame. That is a bit lower than typical, especially with the holidays in that reporting period, but it's always a good thing when the behavioral health numbers come down. Training. Over the past 3 months, staff participated in 471 hours of training. This equates to an average of 157 hours of training each month. Some of the training highlights in that training period were shotgun and rifle qualifications, taser, use of force, scenario training, and toxilizer school, to name a few. Moving on to records. Records averaged fingerprinting 21 individuals, 15 sex offenders were registered on average, 41 warrants or summons were processed on average throughout that 3 months. The animal shelter averaged about 124 calls for service, with most of these calls, again, related to running at large. Cats actually took the trophy this time. You had an average of 77 animals impounded, with the majority being cats this time. Of those animals, over 86% of the impounded animals were returned to their owner, rescued, or adopted out. School resource officers were busy with that quarter. DSU generated 3 investigative reports with no summonses during this period. DHS, Dickinson High School, generated 82 investigative reports, 15 juvenile summonses, and 8 adult summonses, and 9 referrals. The middle school generated 44 investigative reports with 10 juvenile summonses issued. The elementary schools generated 39 investigative reports with no referrals or summonses issued. We still have a problem with tobacco, and vaping is our significant cause of the activities in the school district right now, along with some behavioral health issues here and there, but vaping is still a big issue for us. Community service coordinator was busy with a number of activities during this period, including we had coffee with a cop at St. Luke's home this period. He was busy with homecoming events. We completed alcohol and tobacco compliance checks, as you were aware of. Trick or trunk, shop with a cop was another big activity in that period. The Dickinson Police Association gave back to the community during this period, donating $1,000 toward the Thanksgiving dinner, free dinner at DSU. DPD staff also assisted in serving the meals on Thanksgiving morning in conjunction with that event. November 10th was declared Law Enforcement Support Day by the governor, and I just wanted to bring this up and use this to bring a little attention to our support staff, who rarely get any attention for the great job they do. So I wanted to shout out to Darnell Melkowski, Brandy Aaron, Janelle Grohl, Becky Hoff, Blaine Rieger, and Isabel Chadwick for the great work they do behind the scenes. 3 new patrol recruits, Brian Stager, Justin Berger, and Austin Dennis, graduated from the Law Enforcement Training Academy on December 20th. They were fortunate enough to have Governor-elect Armstrong in attendance for their ceremony. That's the first time the governor's been to that particular ceremony. we're welcoming on board. We did make 3 new hires. Jaden Schmidt from Bismarck, Connor Wood, who is originally from the UK, and Tyler Hopper, who's come to us from Georgia. Officer Wood and Hopper actually came on board in January, so it's a little ahead on that one. But with that, this next video I wanted to show in conclusion is our Coffee with a Cop, or not, excuse me, Coffee with a Cop, Shop with a Cop. That we're really proud of this event. It serves many families, over 50 plus, were served with being able to shop with a police officer and get Christmas gifts for themselves and their family members. So hopefully this plays. I know what's gonna happen if I hit the button, but you get the gist of it. It's hard keeping those kids in budget, and a lot of times officers are pulling cash out of their own pockets to cover the overages at the tills on that event. But it's a popular event, and it does well for the community. It brings law enforcement together with the kids out there. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief Siani. Any questions for Chief Siani? No. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll move into community development, and we have a code enforcement officer 2 job description. This will be presented by building official Schwint.
Good evening, President Decker, Commissioners. What I have in front of you is a job description for a Code Enforcement Officer 2. So this is a promotion opportunity for staff. The difference between the Code Enforcement Officer and a 2 would be a minimum of 3 years experience. Work with our food truck license, coordinates contract work. What that contract work would be is in our summer, our contractors for mowing, weed spraying, and also with our demoing, working with contract labor to bring some structures down and assist in development, education of the noxious weed program. They will have to be, again, 3 years. They have to have a zoning inspector certification through the ICC and have the manufactured housing certificate through the state North Dakota Department of Commerce. Staff recommends approval. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schwint. Any questions for building official Schwint on the code enforcement officer 2 job description? If there are no questions, I look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Bear,
Second.
second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Mr. Schwint, you have an MOU with the North Dakota Department of Health?
I do. Again, it's MOU with the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services. This is for the manufactured home license and enforcement in the city of Dickinson. That actually includes campgrounds also. So the city is responsible for full licensure for the property owners or court owners in the city of Dickinson jurisdiction. It has been looked at by legal and approved by legal. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Schwint. Any questions for Mr. Schwint on this MOU with the North Dakota Department of Health?
I would move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Oderman,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bear. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Schwint. Next up, we have a DWR cost share request for yeah, this is the one we pulled, right? Mans Dam? Yep. So then we have the cost share request for the Queen City Dam. Mr. Keller?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, for your consideration is letters of support for the North Dakota Department of Water Resources cost share application. This letter will authorize the City of Dickinson to submit the project for cost sharing with the DWR. This project is included in the 2025 to 27 DWR Water Development Plan, which increases the probability of successfully being awarded the cost share. This is part of the General Water Management cost share, and it's a 80% maximum, leaving 20% from the city. Based on current estimates, the application is anticipated to be for $144,000, and that's total cost, with the city's cost share of $36,000, for a total of $180,000 for the whole project. So I misspoke first. So just to be clear, the cost share is $144,000. 36 will come from the city for a total of 180. This letter of support is a requirement from the DWR, initiated this year, and the city's share of the project was included in the 25 CIP plan and is scheduled to be funded through the GPT.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Any questions for Mr. Keller on this cost share agreement?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Oderman?
move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Oderman,
Second.
second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Keller.
Thank you.
We next have a DWR cost share request and approval letter for the Dickinson drainage. This will be presented by Engineer and Community Development Director Sklacek.
Good evening, Mr. President and Commissioners. For your consideration is a cost share application for the Department of Water Resources cost share program, and this would be under the flood control segment of that cost share program. In this case, this was included in our CIP plan for 2025, and this project is on the water development plan for 2025 through 2027, which increases our probability of success for receiving the cost share. And this letter of support from the City Commission is a new requirement, as stated on the previous letter of support. This is a new requirement by the DWR. That being said, engineering staff recommends approval. There is a vicinity map up that shows the extent in which the Dickinson drainage way flows through the city of Dickinson, and general intent here is to look at overall, this is where the majority of the individual properties are located within the floodplain within the city limits. And big picture intent, if possible and if successful, we'd look at the potential of maybe even removing some of those properties from the floodplain. And so that's not a promise or assurance, that's just the intent of where we're trying to go with the project. So engineering staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Sklacek. Any questions? Now I look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Bear,
Second.
second by Commissioner Oderman. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next up, we have a FEMA Community Rating System recert, and that'll again be handled by Director Sklacek.
Good evening again, Mr. President and Commissioners. For your consideration is the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP, Community Rating System recertification submittal package. The NFIP Community Rating System has been a key attribute for ultimately aiding the community in getting a cost reduction up to 5% on the flood insurance premiums. Since 2017, ultimately the city's been involved through this community rating system, and our classification is determined by our engagement in 19 different categories, which include public information, mapping and regulation, flood damage reduction, and warning and response. With that, city engineering staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Skolachik. Any questions for city staff on the recert? Not, I'd look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Frederick,
Second.
second by Commissioner Oderman. Any further discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Skolachek, you have a ESRI GSI software contract.
Apologize 1 second, I'm just pulling up that memo. So good evening again, Mr. President, Commissioners. For your consideration is a contract with ESRI or ESRI to provide GIS software for a 1-year contract duration. Total amount of $13,005. City attorney has reviewed this contract or this task order with no comments. There's a number of ultimate key licenses that are listed within the memo, and this ultimately provides the opportunity for multiple different staff members within city staff, not just in engineering, but public works and other departments, to have access to do different forms of necessary data entry and access to the data within the software package. And although there's been a slight increase by maybe a couple $100 since the last time that this was approved, engineering staff recommends approval, and this was budgeted for 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Skolachek. Any questions on the software renewal contract? Well, hearing none, I would ask for a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Oderman,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bear. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Skolachek, you have a KLJ contract amendment.
Good evening again, Mr. President, Commissioners. For your consideration is a task order amendment for KLJ Engineering LLC to perform grant writing services throughout the year of 2025 for an hourly not to exceed amount as specified in the contract, which is $73,602. The individual projects are ultimately tasks listed below. Ultimately identify which grants we're looking to submit for. These individual grants were included in the 2025 capital improvement project budget. Task 1 is for the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart grant. That's something that we submitted in 2024, ultimately look to resubmit in 2025. We anticipate some changes to that grant requirement, which will ultimately obligate us to go back through the entire notice of funding opportunity and make sure that we identify the key opportunities there and provide a good submittal. Task 2 is a resubmittal of the Department of Defense Community Infrastructure Pilot Program grant that was submitted in 2024. We do anticipate also changes to that notice of funding opportunity. Task 3, submittal funding for the Baylor Building expansion for an EPA grant. Task 4, support for the City of Dickinson staff to look at funding requests through the North Dakota Department of Transportation for urban and regional project fundings. The This will also include the North Dakota Department of Transportation Flex Fund program, which we intend to submit for, as well as the Urban Grant program. And task 5, evaluation of our overall projects within our CIP plan to then look for other opportunities for grant funding. Engineering and Public Works staff recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Skolachek. Any questions on the grant writing contract? There are none. I'd ask for a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Oderman,
Second.
second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Oderman.
Aye.
Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Dr. Bear.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Skolachek, you have the 2025 Sidewalk Program Special Improvement District.
Good evening again, Mr. President, Commissioners. For your consideration is Resolution 2025 10-1 for the 2025 Sidewalk Special Improvement District. This resolution is to create a sidewalk improvement district within the city of Dickinson, authorizing the improvement and the assessments, which are all voluntary only, funding option for all citizens. The SID is payable over a 5-year period at an interest rate of 3.7%. Special assessments paid in full by October 1st, 2026 will not be charged interest or penalty as long as it's paid early. This mechanism will allow citizens to make improvements to their sidewalk, curb and gutter, and driveways that are only within the city right-of-way on a voluntary special assessment basis. And ultimately then these costs can be allocated to their property taxes as a special assessment. This is something that the city's been ultimately doing for several years, and the project was budgeted as part of the 2025 capital improvement projects. I do want to emphasize, though, this is a voluntary program, and ultimately city engineering staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Skolachek. Are there any questions on Resolution 2025-10-1?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Bear?
Mr. Klausczyk, I was wondering, were we going to expand this to a 10-year versus 5?
Historically, it's always been 5 for this. When we looked at our capital improvement projects, such as our road maintenance or water main project, those were 10. So I guess that could be something, if there's a request by the commission, we could look at extending to 10. Historically, we have had, we've utilized the budget ultimately, but we've had maybe slightly different or slightly reduced number of individual requests that may or may not be specific to the duration in which the costs get allocated. So I'd be open to feedback, and ultimately that recommendation would be part of the motion, and I think we could change that.
I would be all in favor of extending it at least 10-year, if not 15. I think it would be easier on.
This one's the voluntary program.
This one
Okay.
falls outside the road program.
Okay.
Yeah, this is voluntary. If you want to do your sidewalks, you call the city, and so it's always been 5 on this one. I think it's 10 on the CIP for the road construction projects, but
Yes, that's correct.
We've, like Mr. Skolachek said, in the past, it's been we've used the whole budget, but ultimately what we end up doing is whatever's left in the budget that the citizens don't access, we use to pave some of the city projects, the sidewalks that we need to take care of. Ultimately, this took care of some of the empty lots that were outside of the road projects. Right across from Dickinson High School, that road had that sidewalk in front of that one house. We assisted with that one because it dropped off and there essentially was no sidewalk. Mm-hmm. We helped put in the sidewalk and the I think a culvert and drainage in that. So this is usually outside of, like last year in the Chennagle area.
Yeah.
This would not pertain to anything in the Chennagle area. This would just be like if you wanted to come and you're not in that district, or Commissioner Oderman wanted to come and he's not in that district, he has access to city money to use it.
Okay,
So that's why we've limited it to 5 years, because it's outside the normal.
okay.
So-
My question, just throwing it out there, would more people take advantage of it if we
They may.
extended it out to 10 years?
I mean, I'm not opposed to taking out, it really doesn't affect us. I mean,
Yeah.
they're putting it,
I'm not opposed to offering
Yeah.
a 10-year option on it.
yeah. And we can, if you want to make that motion with that amended on this resolution, we can make it 10 years instead of 5.
Yeah, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to extend the pay period to 10 from 5 years to 10 period.
Okay.
10 years on the sidewalk improvement district.
Dr. Bear, would you entertain a friendly amendment there to that motion? Like, give citizens the option of a 5 or a 10 year?
Because there's no early payment penalty,
Doesn't matter.
doesn't really matter.
right.
If they wanted to pay it off earlier, I guess being consistent, I think, is probably more beneficial for Mrs. Binstock.
City staff, yeah, okay, all right. I'll second his motion.
So we have the amendment to Resolution 2025-10-1, that is allowing for the 10-year payback on the sidewalk program, improvement program, and that is by Commissioner Bear, second by Commissioner Oderman. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Next up, Mr. Sklatchik, you have an NDSU utility easement dedication.
Good evening again, Mr. President and Commissioners. For your consideration is a water main easement dedication located within the southeast quarter of Section 32, Township 140 North, Range 96 West of the 5th Principal Meridian, City of Dickinson, Stark County, North Dakota. The intent of the 20-foot water main easement is for the City of Dickinson to take ownership of the newly constructed water main and appurtenances which were constructed by the North Dakota State University to supply fire and domestic water supply to the buildings within that property. By taking ownership of the water main, the city will maintain the newly installed fire hydrant and main, and ultimately give us access. Then there used to be a vault located where they tied in the domestic supply, and then there's multiple lines that tie in off of that. It'll also ensure that we can properly maintain the fire hydrants, which has been a challenge in the past for Public Works and fire. So engineering staff recommends approval.
You wanted to keep that red line to scale, I take it, so we have to look for it.
For some reason, it really doesn't show up well on that TV. It looked better on my computer.
For the general public, it's right in the middle. I mean,
Yep.
yeah. Any questions on the utility easement? Not, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Frederick.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Oderman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Next up, we have an Apex Houston Dickinson Drainage Task Order.
Good evening again, Mr. President, Commissioners. For your consideration is a task order with Apex Engineering Group Incorporated in collaboration with Houston Engineering Incorporated to perform engineering services for the City of Dickinson project number 2024-10, which is the Dickinson Drainage Way project, for an hourly not to exceed amount of $6,700 as specified in the task order. The intent of this task order, the task order, this was based on a RFP process, or a request for proposal, where we received two specific proposals for this project. Apex Engineering received the highest combined score based on their proposal and their interview that they did for this project. So based on the current project needs, we plan to combine this project with the Northwest Regional Pond, because they're associated with the same drainage basin, making this ultimately one project. If in fact in the future it becomes necessary to split the projects back out, we would take that appropriate action at that time. Scope of work for this would ultimately prepare and assist the city of Dickinson with the North Dakota Department of Water Resources cost share application submittal and developing the overall scope of work, meeting the needs for both the city of Dickinson and for the Department of Water Resources, and anticipated benefits from this project, reducing the frequency and intensity of flooding within that watershed, potentially removing multiple properties from the newly adopted FEMA flood insurance rate map, which was adopted in the fall of 2024. And by potentially removing some of these properties from the FEMA flood insurance rate maps, that there is that opportunity that they would no longer be required to pay flood insurance. So again, I'm not trying to provide any promises or any assurances, but the intent is to work towards that end goal. This project is on the 2025 through 2027 Department of Water Resources Water Development Plan, which increases the likelihood of securing the funding through the Department of Water Resources. It's under the flood control cost share, which is a maximum 60% through the DWR. The other 40% would be the city of Dickinson's responsibilities. So ultimately, assuming that we get the cost share contract with the DWR, we'd come in then at that point with a contract amendment with the total scope of work and schedule and fee estimate at that time. But at this point, it's just to get us through that first hurdle of ultimately acquiring the cost share. We're intending to have this ultimately on the Department of Water Resources State Water Commission April 2025 hearing. So with that, city engineering staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Sklarczyk. Any questions on the Dickinson Drainage Task Order? Not, I'd look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Oderman,
Second?
second by Commissioner Bear. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Oderman?
Aye.
Dr. Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. And Mr. Sklarczyk, you have a monthly report from Engineering and Community Development.
Yes, again, good evening, and Mr. President, Commissioners. So before you is the monthly report for Engineering and Community Development. Oops. Ultimately, I'll start off on the planning side that got skipped. Planning side, we have already had 2 pre-application meetings this year so far, and ultimately we do anticipate having 2 applications on our future P&Z or Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. And we have received the Gate City Bank Dickinson Revitalization Program draft application. We hope to have that before you soon, so that would be a good program. Presented that at a recent meeting, and look forward to that opportunity for the community. For building and codes, there were some questions based on a recent meeting where there were some questions on total fees paid and picked up, both for commercial and for residential, and then a split and everything else. So that's ultimately that was like a year-end review. So that is in the packet as the attachments. From an engineering standpoint, we have multiple projects ongoing, all within multiple different phases of the projects. Currently, we're working on completing the I-94 West Business Loop, which includes the 2 roundabouts. That's ultimately scheduled towards the fall, but ultimately some miscellaneous right-of-way related attributes, areas where we may be blocking off access to certain property owners and some of those kind of things. So the vast majority of the project is complete. It's just buttoning up some loose ends, and we've got plenty of time to do that. So we're ahead of schedule on that project, which is great. Right now, the Highway 22 traffic signals project from Broadway up to 9th Street, the bid opening through the North Dakota Department of Transportation is currently scheduled for Friday of this week, so we look forward to that bid opening. And then we do have for our 2025 water main project, and then our Sims project from 9th Street East down to 2nd Street. Next week, we have our 90% plan review meeting scheduled for both of those projects, and ultimately looking to get those out to bid before the end of this month. Looking at doing a final plan review for the North Industries, the street component of that project here before the end of this month, and getting that out to bid soon. Our 25 road maintenance project also, we're hoping to have that final plan review here in the coming weeks, and then ultimately getting that out to bid. As we get contract awards, we'll ultimately move some of those projects out of the preliminary engineering phase or final engineering phase and move those into the construction ready phase. So it'll be a different column of data than for those individual projects. And then ultimately, finally, then our GIS or Geographical Information System, a lot of updates going on. Continue to update our utility information and some of the attribute data, and been editing some features and ultimately utilizing that data by a significant amount of staff, both in engineering, public works, and some of the other departments. So happy to see the utilization and all the value that ultimately adds to the staff. And there has been some information requests through the Census Bureau, and so addressing those requests and providing that data. With that being said, welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Skletchik. Any questions on the quarterly report? I guess it's a monthly report. Any questions on the monthly report? Thank you again. All right, we'll move to item number 9 on the agenda, and that's public comments not on the agenda. If you wish to come forward, please state your name. Let us know your thoughts.
Good evening. I think it's an ominous sign that Commissioner Riddle, who is arguably the greatest defender of free speech up there, is not here tonight. I want to begin by thanking all the patriots in Dickinson, North Dakota, America, and around the world who have studied the problems going on right now and have logically deduced what is going on. When men begin to study what is going on carefully after first studying and mastering themselves, no easy feat to be sure, amazing things are in store. Last week I was interrupted, and I'm going to repeat exactly what was said because we're going to review what was said to ensure that not only does that never happen in this city again, but it never happens in any city in America again. What happened last week was an unfortunate attack on the free speech rights of all 330 million Americans. And I can assure you that no American appreciates their free speech rights infringed upon. For if one of our rights is infringed upon, that is ensures the eradication of the rights of all of us. There's no such thing as hate speech for some people and non-hate speech for others. Mao and Stalin were in favor of speech that they liked. And we saw...
I'm going to interrupt you again, Mr. Matt Asano. Does this pertain to the city?
It just happened last week. I should hope it does.
Actually, it didn't happen last week. It was a couple of weeks
2 weeks ago.
Okay. Well, just to be correct then.
It does.
But I want to what you're talking about, your free speech was not interrupted. We allowed you to speak. As I said, people are free to be free of you. They don't have to listen to you. So, and we have asked politely that you bring items before us that pertain to the city that we can correct. I let you speak. I just told everybody, and as I'm going to tell them right now, you are free to leave. You do not have to listen to this man. Matter of fact, stop the stream. You can continue. Anybody else, you want to leave? You are free to leave right now, and we will sit here and listen to you. You have your 15 minutes.
So you're saying that the stream from the city is cut off so nobody could watch the video?
That is correct.
Okay. You're just going to bring more attention. I mean, the meeting is actually packed more today than it has ever been, and it's going to get even more packed because when public officials try to silence the free speech rights of citizens, which you're doing.
I'm not silencing your free speech, Mr.
You are.
So no, go ahead and speak.
Okay, I appreciate that, but we're going to examine, the whole purpose of the stream is for transparency.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
It is a courtesy.
No, it's
we
not.
started providing, that because of COVID, because people could not attend meetings. It was a courtesy. Just like I call out when the commissioners vote, I do it as a courtesy because this room's hard to hear. And I say, that was a motion by Commissioner Berger. That's a courtesy. I don't have to do that, right? This stream is a courtesy. We have provided it as courtesy since COVID. Before then, we never streamed live. It was a courtesy.
Free speech is not a courtesy. I regret I have to inform you of that. You should know that.
You're able to speak. I'm not inhibiting your free speech, but you are not going to use us as a platform.
The thing is, if you stand for a corrupt system, as Tertullian said, the first reaction to truth is hatred. And so what you see when I'm saying the truth, because if everyone in Dickinson knew and was acquainted with the facts that I'm revealing up here, you would not be up there right now. And you know that. You're a smart man. You know that the corrupt system that you have fit in well for your entire career would come crashing down if people understood the truth. You know that. You had no business being in a war that America had no business being in. We should have never been in any foreign conflicts at all since World War I. So you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I was in the military, but I got a conscience ejector because I knew what was going on. You stayed in and you fit in and you still fit into a corrupt system. And so that's why you're trying to silence me right now, and it won't work because you, if you continue in this path, are going to be replaced. I don't need to do anything. Words are weapons. I don't need guns. My words are far more effective than guns are.
I hear recalls work really well.
They do. And it's coming for you. I kind of regret it because you seem like a man of courage. Unfortunately, a word I've never heard you use is called wisdom. And when you go to war without wisdom, you lose. And you're going to lose. Now, please let me finish. So, any of the city staff that wants to, actually, let me, so your remarks, let's go over them. So you said, I think you have abused our good graces. Now, it is not by the good graces of public officials that we are up here as citizens to speak. Let's get that clear. It is not by the good graces of any public official, any court official, any judge, any vote, anything. It is a right from God. It's not from any person. God has given each of us individually a right to say what is on our mind. And that right is sacred, and that is what this nation was founded upon. And you interfered with that, which means you have a problem with God, which is a terrible position to be in for you. So, the First Amendment gives us 5 rights. It gives us the freedom to grieve. Grieve means to complain. When we see things are wrong, and if you can't see things are wrong in Dickinson and in America and around the world, you are blind. There are things that are wrong, and it needs to be exposed. And our lousy media, the Dickinson press, is part of the problem. I can't believe they dare to show their faces up here. The lies that they have put into the community is an absolute disgrace. And I see, who's the Dickinson press owned by? Let's get into that. Forum Communications. Who owns Forum Communications? Marsick, it looks like Marsil, whatever his name is. It doesn't interest me. I know he's a corrupt or ignorant man. Because if he tolerates this shoddy reporting where you don't contact me, Evan Butow, this is a coward who, when I walk into this meeting, he's standing across the street, masked up, hiding, trying to take my picture. A young man who's part of the Google indoctrination generation who can't figure out what good journalism is. There's two sides to every story. He doesn't understand this.
Mr. Masano, what does this have to do with city business?
The fact that you have a media that's corrupt, you're going to be recalled. I would be quiet if I were you.
Mr. Masano, what does this have to do with city business?
Plenty. Your media is corrupt. You don't know that? What's wrong with you?
Mr. Masano, lower your tone, and what does this have to do with something that about city business? It does not. You
So
have a
how
problem
do
with the
people
Dickinson
know
press,
what's going on?
and go spew it out there on the street.
How do people know what's going on here with your media? If your media is corrupt, and it is, who
Mr.
owns-
Masano, we do not need to let you use our media publications that we do these meetings to spew your worthless dribble.
Mr. Frederick, I'm sorry that you're intellectually challenged, but the fact of the matter is I've been speaking for 45 minutes, and apparently you had concrete in your ears when I was speaking because you missed the gist of what I was talking about. I would recommend you learn critical thinking because you severely lack it. Maybe the college can help you out in that category. But the fact of the matter is when I talk about a corrupt media, 96% of the media is owned by 6 corporations.
I think it'd be a good time for an intermission.
Yep.
Okay. We're in recess. We'll call the session back to order.
So, Benjamin Franklin, under his pseudonym Simon's Dogood, said that whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. And that is exactly what we're witnessing. Because while some of us do have freedom of speech somewhat, it's fading rapidly, and we don't have freedom of reach. So the media has freedom of reach, they can get to far more people. The speech, it was seen by 100,000, but there's 330 million people in America. So we are limited by algorithms, shadow bans, and bot armies online to who sees what. So the response of people who come and respond the way they do to what I say is expected because we respond with the information that we've been given. If we've been given limited information, which I once was as well, we will respond as that. Now, Frederick Douglass, he said, no right was deemed by the fathers of government more sacred than the right of speech. It was in their eyes and in the eyes of all thoughtful men, the great moral renovator of society and government. So if we're going to fix things, we must have free speech, and that means unrestricted free speech. Now, I want to clarify that there are restrictions on free speech. Not what we saw tonight. This is a disgrace. That's not a restriction on free speech that the founders of America would have recognized. But the founders of free speech recognized that profanity, vulgarity, obscenity, libel, slander, pornography, these are all not allowed in the First Amendment. But our society is so backwards that while I'm being continuously attacked as I attempt to tell the truth, yet right now there are people in this city and around America who have free access to pornography, which had never been legalized, and it was actually illegal in 1969 before Stanley versus Georgia. So, and that needs to actually happen again. And I find it very interesting that Mr. Port over there at the newspaper, which is full of people who are ignorant and corrupt, sits there and attacks my free speech and says he has the mayor on his podcast, which the mayor freely gets on, and we'll speak with him. And here's a man who thinks that pornography is perfectly okay, and that's speech that we should allow. But my speech, this is terrible, we can't allow that. So you talk about people who say that good is evil and evil is good. This is Mr. Port over there is a perfect example of that. I sent a letter to James Miller, who's in the audience right now, who's the editor of the newspaper, and of course he didn't respond, but I pointed out to him how his newspaper is in error, and on so many things. His letter, probably my letter, was 5 times the length of his because I had to go over all the corrections that need to be done on his shoddy reporting, which does not include 2 sides. He can't seem to get it into his head that there's 2 sides to every story, and we are all born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we could listen twice as much as we speak. And that is the fact that the newspaper, Mr. Evan goes running to Google. That's his authority. Whatever Google says must be the truth. Well, who owns Google and Wikipedia? Same group. And if I say who they are, I'm an anti-Semite. So, I spoke with, I believe this is Ms. Binstock. Am I correct? So I spoke with Ms. Binstock yesterday, and I asked about a slideshow. The city has allowed colleges, you've allowed private citizens to do slideshows. I've got all kinds of information that is far more than books, quotes, credible sources, that I could give insight on what's going on here in Dickinson, and we're going to get to that in a couple minutes, and nationwide, because it's all connected, and worldwide. And she said, well, if you submit it to us, that we will consider it. Now, last I checked, free speech was not, like, for government officials to decide what can and cannot be said unless it meets the parameters that I just mentioned. So if we're talking about, so if someone got up here like Black Lives Matter and started hollering F-bombs and all this, I would totally agree with the mayor in shutting that down. I would be the first one in line to say you absolutely should do that. Or if a white person got up and started saying the N-word, which I understand has been said twice in the school system, I completely agree that that should be shut down. Racial slurs should not be tolerated. If someone got up here with obscene pictures, I would agree with you in shutting that down. But I do not agree on restricting speech that someone just merely disagrees with. I expect at the next meeting to have the PowerPoint. I expect that, I'm sure the citizens of the city, if you put it to a vote, they're all going to agree that we want an open transmission. If people don't want to watch and hear it, that's fine, but don't restrict other people's ability to do it. The videos of the Times here got at least 100,000 views overall around the world, so people are definitely interested. That's actually triple the population of this city, allegedly. I don't know, it might have 22,000. So people are interested. They like the truth. The truth is being silenced and suppressed for a reason. So the newspaper did an article, you're having problems with immigration in Dickinson. So practically every other city in this nation is. And Trump said sending illegal immigrants home, well, that doesn't impress me. 1,500 days not doing it. You need to be doing 10,000 plus. But the problem is, before 1965, you were not allowed to move to America unless you were white. That was the law. And it was a Jew who passed the law that you can now move here if you are a non-white. That was on purpose. It was for cheaper wages and to destroy the majority in America. America has 500 million guns. That's more than all the other nations on this earth put together. So the majority of America being white, if you want to destroy America, you have to take out the majority, and you have to enlist the support of non-whites to do that. That's this agenda. So when I read the article, I go and I hear Sidewalk properties. They have a lot of problems. So I go look it up, and sure enough, 500 police calls to the apartment unit in a year, which is excessive to put it mildly. Also, in 2008, this city had 1 student in English as a second language. You now have 350. How did that all happen under your watch, too, Mayor? You're responsible for that. You're saying, and I saw you say we're a nation of immigrants. People are already calling. We're a nation of immigrants, and we are a nation of immigrants, but we're a nation of white immigrants. If you go read the Statue of Liberty, which says, "Give me your tired, give me your poor," by Emma Lazarus, who is just wait for it, a Jew. So, I mean, it's like when you start looking deeply into all the facts, every time you shake a tree, the same culture falls out. I mean, I'm not trying to make this up, and I'm not against Jews. Henry McCow is Jewish. His website just featured my last speech, and he was very congratulatory about it. I have Jewish friends who strongly support me, and they tell me this stuff. So it's not the idea that Ryan hates all Jews. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's a lack of critical thinking on the part of people saying this stuff. So I looked up Sidewalk Properties. And the CEO of Sidewalk Properties is Adam Hendry. Adam Hendry is, wait for it, I'm beginning to see a pattern, a Jew. And I went to his webpage to go see things about him. Where is his favorite restaurants? Now, a man who's prominent in Dickinson, I would expect he has interest here in Dickinson in America. No, his favorite restaurants are in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And then I looked further, I was like, okay, who's his favorite people? So I go down the list, 80% Jewish, and one of the names jumped out at me. It was the Rebbe. Now, of course, we don't know much about this because we don't have time to sit here and study it, and it's not going to be in our media because they're owned by him. But the Rebbe is Rabbi Mendel Schneerson, who was the leading rabbi in the 19th century. He actually, in the middle of World War II, was given an honor escort out of Germany. So this idea that, Hitler and they hated all the Jews. Well, how did the leading Jewish rabbi get an honor escort out of Germany in the middle of World War II? How did that happen? How did Israel get started by Germany, by the way? Look up the Havara agreements. Germany was the first one to fund people to move to Israel. We're not told that for some reason. But anyway, Schneerson, here's a direct quote from Schneerson, who is admired by Adam Hendry, who is the CEO of the property that is giving this city the most problems right now. And somehow, the local media, James Miller, can't really connect the dots. He talks about Sidewalk properties, but he can't bring himself to do further research, what a reporter should be doing. Can't really put it together. Kind of dull and blind for some reason. But, so, Schneerson says, this is a verbatim quote, "A non-Jewish soul comes from 3 satanic spheres." So what that means is everyone in this room who is not a Jew comes from 3 satanic spheres. Now, I don't know about you, but when someone says that I come from 3 satanic spheres, that sounds kind of hateful. And the newspaper that just called me hateful, I kind of find it interesting that this is acceptable stuff to them. It passes right over. It's okay. Because you say that everyone who's not a Jew comes from hateful sphere or satanic spheres, that's okay. While the Jewish soul stems from holiness, the entire creation of a non-Jew exists only for the sake of Jews. So I don't know why I'm hateful for repeating what a Jew said. That's what he said. That is what the man who's causing the most problems in your city, this is the guy that he admires. If you can't figure out what's behind this chaos in your city, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like, if you have half a brain, you can kind of understand there's a group of people with an agenda that wants to destroy white Christians, and white Christians are sitting here, oh, we just love these people, even though the Talmud says the best of the Goyim deserve to be killed, and every woman who's not a Jew is a prostitute and a whore, which is why Pornhub and OnlyFans are owned by Jewish people. Oh, but we don't know that because we're not told by the media because it's run by Jews too. So, anyways, the whole thing is to bring in illegals, and I don't know, I haven't heard from you yet, Mayor, about how illegals should not be in America. You probably need to take a stand on that. They shouldn't be here. They should be going right back to where they came from. They should get this idea. I heard the police and the fire chief talking about we have difficulties with language barriers. Send them back. It's very easy. They shouldn't be here to begin with. You know, I have friends of all races. I have friends that are Latino. I have friends that are black, Asian, Jewish, all races. We have countries for a reason with laws. The laws are you don't come here illegally, period. Not that elected officials cooperate with Jewish-owned corporations like Walmart on the oil field that's over there too, to hire cheap labor. And you think these people are coming here and they're getting opportunity. They're being exploited. They're in 120-degree heat in California sitting there slaving on the farmyards. And I know on the oil fields, I see guys up there freezing conditions. And they're making barely anything. So they're not only dropping the pay of Americans, they're barely making anything themselves. It's an outrage, and public officials should be able to put a stop to this. Now, I know some public officials have cooperated with this system for quite some time, and that needs to end, because the voters are sick and tired of this. Oh, I know people in America right now are kind of sleeping. And Mayor, it is a shame that I hope you repent of the fact that you have fit so well into this system. Because your conscience should have called you a long time ago and said, this is wrong, I need to get away from it. You know, what's right is not always popular, what's popular is not always right. I know I'm unpopular, and I don't really care. When I die, I want 2 friends. That's my conscience and God. And I have those 2 friends, and right now, you don't. They're your enemy. So, ultimately, you know, you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and be able to say that you have courage. And right now, Mayor, you have not demonstrated courage. When the time came to stand up for the truth in public, you wilted. I know public support. I know people are calling you powerful people that are telling you to put a stop to what I'm saying. I know that. I read Rob Ford. I know there's people even more powerful than him getting on the phone with you. And you know what? I don't care who they are. I don't care how much money they have, because the truth is more powerful than them, and the truth that I'm saying right here is more powerful than that military you and I both served for. Because all 2 million members of that military would go down if everyone in America knew what I'm saying right now. There would be no military. We shouldn't have a standing army. You should have never been over there to begin with. We shouldn't have anybody in the military. We don't need it. We're working on having World War III set up right now. And I want to end with, at the next meeting, I fully expect to be able to speak for the duration, and I expect to have the same access to the PowerPoint that every other citizen, the college, their history professors, in a one-on-one debate, I will, you know, the fact is I sit here, I can't teach at a college because what I'm saying is the truth, and then they don't want kids exposed to the truth, so they're busy being brainwashed. Now, under your watch, you know, if you have the truth should be able to stand up in fierce criticism. There's no one in this room that I'm afraid of in a conversation. No one. There's no one in this city. There's no one in this nation. Not a person. You know why? Because, as Augustine said, the truth is a lion. Let her out of her cage and let her do her job, which it's doing right now. And that truth, it's not going to go back until all the people who oppose it, you're going to have to deal with it. Because when the people find out the truth, all the charlatans are going to be exposed. And it's not a pretty thing. But you know what you have to blame for all the repercussions for opposing the truth? You. No one forced you to do what you did. You did it on your own. And every public, see, this what's happening here, this is being seen nationwide. Oh, you might have turned off the feed, but people are going to find out now. Now people in Dickinson are going to be like, oh, what did he say? You're just going to heighten the interest. Controversy draws attention. I knew that before I walked in. The more you try to repress what I say, the bigger the attention's gonna grow. This is always the way it happens in history. And every single leader, Mayor, who has tried to suppress speech is always dealt with. And if not now, then in their grave. We don't remember Tom's fallen very fondly. So I hope, there's still time, you can change your tune. You can get on the right side and start actually having courage, which without courage, Mayor, you are not a man. And no man in this room, if he doesn't have courage, you're not a man. You might as well start finding that dress aisle in the store and start shopping in it. Because without courage, you are a woman. You are an idiot. And you are ignorant.
Anyone else wishes to come forward as comments for the commission? No.
Hi, my name is Tanya Jorgensen. I'm an actual City of Dickinson resident. I've been here for 15 years. So my comments pertain to this nonsense that has gone on 3 times now. And I'll keep it short. I believe in freedom of speech 110%. I really do get it. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen. But this man's views are dangerous and hateful. He has his own platform to share these ideas on with anybody who even wants to listen. This does not help our city in any way. It spreads misinformation and hate. There comes a point in time when if you ignore something long enough, even to keep the peace and allow somebody their First Amendment rights, you become complicit in it. What this man has to say does not reflect our community's values, and it has no place in our city. I would like to respectfully ask Mr. Mansano to please not speak at any future meetings. It does not help our city. I don't know if you guys have watched the Sacramento meeting from 2023, the uncensored one. Something's got to be done, or that's what we're headed for. I mean, 15 minutes of stacked calls from little racist friends. Our community does not need this, and we are better than that. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone else wish to come forward?
You don't need to be recording me either.
I did. You're in a public meeting. Put up or shut up.
I'll close the public comments. Commissioners, do you have any items that you wish to comment on? Anything? Nope. All right, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.